Hi everyone, I'm Terry Modised, the Executive Director of the Centre for Legal Innovation at the College of Law. Welcome back to CLI's Legalpreneurs Spotlight Future 50 series. We're showcasing thought leaders and doers in legal innovation and legal tech around the world. And someone who definitely fits that category is my guest today, Isabel Parker. Hi, Isabel.
Hello, Terry. Lovely to be
here. And great to have you. Isabel has an amazing history in the legal world as a lawyer, a chief innovation officer, and now as the executive director of the Digital Legal Exchange. She draws on all of that experience, lots of experience, Isabel, draws on all of that experience in her wonderful new book titled Successful Digital Transformation in Law Firms, A Question of Culture. And we're going to be chatting about that today. Now, Isabel, I have to tell you, proof. Oh. I do actually have the book, so that's all good.
Thank you.
And I should also say, welcome back to CLI and huge congrats on the book, by the way.
Thank you very much. It was a labor of love. I'm very pleased that I did it now, but it was a big effort. I have so much respect for all those journalists, authors, academics out there that do this as their full-time job. It's
absolutely. Tough. Absolutely. I suspect that every author in the world, no matter what they've authored, has a similar feeling as well, right?
I'm sure that's right. But it's a great, hopefully practical text. That's what it's intended to be. It's intended to be helpful for people who are starting to think about digital transformation and to give them a bit of a practical roadmap to how to do that within the context of a law firm partnership. So hopefully it's of value and use to people too.
I'll attest to the fact that I think it's great. Really wonderful. I wanted to jump into some of the big themes in the book actually, and maybe kick off with a couple of quick questions. The byline in a way is about culture. So I wanted to start by asking you, how do you define or how do you interpret culture with respect to the book, and of course the book reflecting your own experience?
Great question. So culture is one of those very kind of mercurial and slippery concepts, isn't it? And it can mean different things to different people depending on, where you're coming from. So, it can be the Sydney Opera House to some, watching Madame Butterfly in your tuxedo. Yeah. And it can be, a Petri dish growing bacteria to others. And I like that sort of science lab idea of culture as an organic product, if you like, of effort and having the right growth medium to make it grow. So something that grows, something that's organic. In terms of organizational culture, it's, again, tricky to find a really sharp definition. But the best I have found is that culture in an organization is how we behave when nobody is looking. So it's those formal and informal interactions that really tell you a lot about what the organization is about how people interact with each other, about what its purpose is. So looking for both those formal signs and those informal signs, that's the best way to get to what an organizational culture is. And just very important to note that culture, although it's, it can be a long established product of behaviors and norms and ways of acting that build up over many years, it isn't immutable. It can be changed, and that's a really important concept, because sometimes we think of cultural change as impossible, too big a whale to land, if you like. But just like anything else, culture can be changed. It can be managed as part of business as usual, and it can be impacted and influenced for the better. And that's a really important point, I think, on culture.
Absolutely. And I guess as we look at the legal ecosystem today, and just in some respects, the volatility, but also the dynamism of that environment as well, that kind of constant changing and being able to adapt and be agile is got to be an important part of the culture.
I think absolutely right. And there's a fabulous book, I'm always plugging this book, by John Cotter, who's really the godfather of organizational change. I can see you smiling. This one, it's his most recent one, Change. And he talks about how you, as an organization, can create the right culture to deal with our volatile times. And where he comes out is it's not so much about a strong culture. Strong cultures are, useful, and they've been helpful in the past in stable times. But in a very volatile world, what we need is an adaptive culture, culture where you can pivot, where you can be responsive, where you can be adaptive. And law firms, traditional law firm partnerships, although they do have many strengths, I don't want to be down on law firm partnerships. No. I grew up in one. You know, they have a lot of amazing qualities to them. Yeah. They're not, in general, tremendously adaptive. Often we hear that analogy of the oil tanker turning the oil tanker when we talk about law firms, and there's a reason for that. Yeah. So being adaptive culturally is incredibly important in today's digital world.
Yeah, it's almost in a way taking the best of what you've done and recognizing when that is not true and changing, isn't it? You know, that's and evolving your culture accordingly.
I think that's right. And if you sort of think about, I did a lot of research for this book about, you know, what really makes a successful digital company. And to do that, I had to look outside legal for lots of reasons, because legal is quite immature on the maturity curve when it comes to change and innovation. I think we're getting there, but we're still a little bit behind some other parts of the business. So I looked outside of legal for inspiration. And, you know, you could see that what makes for a really good or healthy corporate culture is often what we equate with a sort of digital culture. So aspects like, you know, organizational diversity, that's really, really important. So lots of different viewpoints that create a sort of more innovative result. Transparency is something else. You be open about information, sharing information across the organization. Agility, being responsive to customers, being able to serve them better. So all these things are characteristics of successful digital companies. They're also what we would think about as making a good culture. If you're diverse, if you're open, if you're transparent, if you're agile, then in general, you would see that as a positive place to work. So I think that's something that law firms need to be sort of having front of mind, you know, be adaptive in the way that you respond to your clients and the way you respond to your people, be open and transparent with information, be more diverse in your organizational structure, because that just leads to better culture, and better culture fosters better change. That's just a fact, I think.
Yeah. And you've touched on this, but let me ask you this question directly, because it's the connector in a way as well in your book. How is digital transformation or successful digital transformation tied to culture very specifically?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, cultural change is hard in any organization. But anyone who's worked in a sort of law firm transformation role, and I'm sure lots of people watching this will have done that, will tell you that there is something uniquely challenging about affecting change in a traditional law firm partnership. Why is that? It's a strange one, because lawyers individually are incredibly smart, pretty entrepreneurial, actually. You know, they are individuals. They're energetic, they're curious. But in the sort of confines of a partnership structure, somehow you end up with less than the sum of your parts sometimes, and a sort of non-adaptive, very rigid structure. And it goes back to that point that Cotter made about adaptability. If you're going to drive effective change through an organization, you have to be able to think differently. Digital transformation isn't a sort of a project. It's not, it's more than just technology. It's more than just hiring the right kind of people. It's about fundamental business model change at every level of the organization. And to achieve that, you really do need to have a culture that is open to changing and growing. And so how do you achieve it? Well, you know, you have to harness the very best parts of the law firm culture and try to use those to drive the change through the whole organization. I'm very, very keen on the idea of harnessing sort of engage volunteerism at every level of the organization, rather than just through one innovation team or senior leadership team. If you can achieve that and push that through the entire organization, you have a much better opportunity to drive change. I hope that's answered the question. It's really about adaptive cultures help to drive change more effectively. It's just a fact, and digital transformation is big change.
And also, Isabel, and I know you mentioned this in the book, and I just wanted to underscore it and get any additional thoughts you might have on it as well. Sustaining that change is just hugely important as well, isn't it?
It is. And there are sort of two ways to approach sustaining the change, I think. Firstly, the transformation itself. So lots of law firms will have had many failed IT implementation programs. It's a fact. Large law firms in particular will have experienced that. They can be horrifically complex, they can be slow, sometimes they don't deliver the ROI. So often when you are thinking about digital transformation, you are communicating to a partnership that's skeptical about the capacity for change and transformation in the first place.
Yep.
So for that reason, not everyone's going to buy in automatically. It's a fact. So to get buy-in for that transformational change, you need a really compelling case for change, and you need a really good business case. And if you talk about the case for change, first of all, I spent a lot of time in my previous role trying to engage people and excite people about the change. And I made loads of mistakes as part of that and went down the wrong route many times. I think one of the things that I tried to do that wasn't as successful as it could have been is to position the need to change as a real burning platform. So if we don't change, if we don't digitally transform, others will come in, alternative legal services providers, the big four, eat our lunch, will be, driven to extinction. And that burning platform, is very difficult to make an argument for when law firms are doing very well, as they are now, and to do, and we're pleased about that.
Yes.
And also, I think it triggers the wrong kind of response in people. It makes people feel defensive, particularly very clever lawyers who then want to pick a hole in your argument and find a way out of that sort of narrative. So positioning the case for change, not as a burning platform, but as an opportunity is really, really critical. So just to emphasize the rewards that are available for successful digital transformation, the opportunity to differentiate yourself with your clients, to get closer to your clients, to deliver a better experience to your people, all of these elements of digital transformation, which are the upside of the sort of pain of going through it. So that's the first point, position the case for change as an opportunity. And the second element is the business case. And business case, and I'm just looking at my notes here because it's important to articulate this in really the right way. Digital transformation does require commitment, and that's commitment, financial commitment. There will always be a financial commitment, and really importantly, commitment of leadership time.
Yeah.
Transformation isn't like a program or a project. It's not one-off, it's forever now, and it's a multi-year investment. And sometimes that is challenging, particularly for partners who aren't used to that sort of long-term investment horizon. They're used to sort of quite short-term ROI on investment. So you have to make sure you have a robust business case that sets out the costs of what you're trying to do and the benefits in a realistic way, and which sort of positions the investment as multi-year and protects it against sort of budget slashing every year. That's really, really important. Second point is leadership time. Commitment of leadership time is critical. Everyone likes to talk about change, innovation, digital transformation. We like to win awards. All of that stuff is all important and good, but you have to be in it for the long run, through good times and bad, and there will be bad times and tough times in a digital transformation. So you need the right organizational structures in place to drive that commitment of leadership time. And we don't have time to go into what those might be, but governance is really important. So have you got the right structures in place to make sure that digital transformation is being, is being atomized, if you like, across all levels of the firm, and we've got that engaged volunteerism really pushing it forward. So so that's what I would say. To sustain transformation, you need good case for change based on opportunity, and you need commitment, financial and of leadership time. So a good business case is critical.
As you were speaking, Isabel, it really resonated with me, but also I think it made me think about that this is the reason that a lot of people went into law, to serve their clients better, to support and assist them in their businesses or their pursuits or whatever the case may be. So in some respects, it's taking us back to basics in a very positive way, but putting the twist on that, obviously, within the context and environment in which we're operating today.
That's absolutely nailed it. And I think it comes down to, it's such a sort of zeitgeisty word now, but purpose. It comes down to purpose. What do law firms exist to do? They're there to give the very best client experience to their customers. That's what they're there to do, not to make money for the partners. They're there to serve their customers. And the most essential and key part of digital transformation, as you know, is customer centricity, starting with your client. And to keep that front of mind and, talking about sustaining change, there's no better way to make your case for change and to articulate the opportunity associated with that than to bring in the client voice and say, this is what clients are doing themselves. This is what clients expect of you. This is a chance to understand them better, to get closer to them, to become those real trusted advisors for the long term. So absolutely go back to the core purpose of what your firm is there to do and center it around your clients and build the digital transformation strategy around that. That's absolutely the right way to go.
As you said, this is an investment, and I love that word, and I repeat it because so often these things are seen as an expense, and this is an investment that can't be measured from one financial year to the next. But for the folks that are listening, you've taken these journeys, a number of them in a number of different iterations. Where should a law firm today that wants to start the transformation journey actually start? What's that kicking off, I don't know, initiative or point or conversation that starts or launches them on their way?
Well, it's going to sound really boring as a response, I think, but you have to start with the strategy. If you don't approach this strategically, you will never get the return on investment from it. And I know this from my own experience.
Yeah.
In the early days, in my previous role, we just didn't have the strategy in place to know what we were doing effectively at that time. So we made lots of investments that were very much point investments, which some of them were the right ones, more by luck than judgment, actually, at that point. And so we were fine, we got away with it. But I think if we had approached it as a real strategy from the beginning, we would have moved even faster than we did. And as soon as we did move to really create the vision and strategy for digital transformation at all levels of the firm, then it suddenly all made sense as a holistic enterprise. So I would start with the vision and strategy. And in my book, I talk about that at length because it's something that can be taught. I mean, it's not, strategy sounds so sort of frightening and monolithic, like it's some massive document. It doesn't have to be. It's just thinking about what you're about to do in a very sort of critical way. So I have sort of 8 steps that I would sort of suggest for getting to that vision and strategy. And I'm just going to very quickly take you through them if we've got time. So the first one is to understand the law firm strategy or your organizational strategy if you're in a corporate legal team, because there's no point creating a digital transformation strategy that pulls against where your firm is heading. There's absolutely no point to that. So understand that strategy. And that's not always that easy. It sounds easy, but in law firms, where is the strategy? Sometimes it's in here, sometimes it's in here, and you have to sort of pull that out of different individuals. So that's the first point, understand your business strategy of your wider enterprise. Then, and this is the really sort of tedious but necessary bit, do a full diagnostic of all the opportunities that you have for digital change at every level of what you do. And that, is a big undertaking. So looking for opportunities for efficiency, for new revenue generation, for improving the client experience, right across the board for your internal clients and your external clients. That's the second step. The third one is to look at the competitor landscape. And, not so that you can ape what everybody else is doing, but you do need to know how other people are investing in order to differentiate yourself in the market, or to make sure that you have the table stakes investments that are going to be expected of you by your clients. That's really important. The fourth one, this isn't linear, this maybe should come first, is to talk to clients. Really important, because there's no point designing something that somebody doesn't want to buy, right? Or making assumptions that you know what they want. And that's really critical. So talk to your clients. Fifth one is to create a business case. We've talked about that a little bit. Sixth is to make a plan for executing and get the right team in place. And the right team, the right people, doesn't necessarily mean the right lawyers, the right technical people. It means a whole multidisciplinary universe of different talents and skills. And seventh step is to create the document, the vision and strategy document, and comms plan, and then 8, communicate it over and over again. And at Freshfields, we had, and I share it in the book, a really simple pyramid diagram of our strategy that we referred to over and over again. And everything we did aligned to one strata of that pyramid. So people started to understand our language, to see what we were doing. So you can't over communicate what you're trying to achieve. And the objective of that is to engage people right across the firm, not just the innovation team, not just the senior leadership, but everyone in a sort of shared vision and strategy and pushing together to achieve it. So that's not an easy, this is the first place to start, but I think the strategy and vision is really, really critical to get right.
But it is starting with the end in mind, where,
Yes.
you know, all the dots are connected, but also understanding that it's a living, breathing strategy that's going to change as you go along the way.
I mean, that's so true. That is so true. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's absolutely right. The other thing about the strategy is it's going to change. It needs to be revisited regularly.
Yeah.
It's an organic product. Absolutely right.
And just couldn't agree more with you about the communication. It's so often overlooked, and absolutely to the detriment of everything else you're trying to achieve. So just love that point is well and truly made as well. Isabel, it's a fantastic book. I know I said it at the beginning, but I want to say it again. Huge congratulations. You know, here it is, folks. Very colourful. Looks wonderful. It's Successful Digital Transformation in Law Firms, a Question of Culture. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today, Isabel. And welcome to the Future 50 series. This book, your thoughts and the work that you've done well and truly belong in this series. So thank you very much again.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure and privilege to be here. Thank you, Terry.